All right, guys. You guys go ahead and continue eating. And if you haven't gotten anything to eat yet, go ahead and get in line. Feel free, but we're going to get ready to get started. So again, like I said earlier, I announced earlier, for some of you guys that may not know who I am, my name is Chris Hill, and I'm full-blood Muscogee Creek. And my partner here, she's roaming around here somewhere. She's Oto and Osage over there, Miss Veronica Pipestem. So again, if you're wanting to tell a story later on, you're more than welcome to come up here and let us know, and we'll give you time. That's what tonight is all about. It's about sharing. This is old traditional ways. A lot of tribes, they used to do this during the winter time. They would sit in their longhouses or their teepees, and they would tell stories to their youth. And these stories not only wasn't scary, but it was to teach you a lesson. It had a lot of information. Those were like our first schools to tell you where to go and what to do and what happens if you go to these places. And so, anyway, if you guys can pay attention and give us your undivided attention, we're going to start calling our first storyteller. But at this time, again, I was telling you a little bit about myself. Some of you guys may or may not know who I am. I go ghost hunting. I do storytelling events just like this all over Indian country. I visit many different tribes, just like tonight. And I'm thankful for the Osage Nation and the Osage Nation Museum, Miss Marla Redcorn and her staff, hosting this event here in Osage Nation. On their reservation, they have a lot of stories all over this reservation. They have 3 districts here, and each district has their own stories. And so tonight, we're going to ask and call upon some of these people to tell their stories. So again, let us try to be respectful, not only to them, but to all our storytellers that come up and want to share their stories. Again, like I was saying, I go all over Indian country. I post a lot of my new adventures on what they call, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. I've gone to some pretty amazing places. But I just went up to Las Vegas. There's a lot of places up there, supposed to be very haunted. One of them, they have that Zach Bagans Haunted Museum. I went to go visit. It was interesting, some of the things that they had. But the thing that I really found interesting up there was the First Nations people that were roamed that Las Vegas area. People don't hear their stories. Again, they have stories of that desert. They have different bands of those Utes that were from that area. And other tribes, smaller tribes in that area. And to them, those parts of the desert have their own spirits. When you go through that desert, you're supposed to be respectful and honor those spirits and talk to them. Because if you don't, they will follow you and drive you crazy. Las Vegas known for their brutality back in the 50s and even 60s and 70s. Those First Nations people that lived there, they know that those spirits probably have caused a lot of that in that area. But, you go there now, you hear all these ghost stories from these non-natives. You hear about these gangsters and all those kind of evil people like that. But from those First Nations people, you'll hear stories of evil spirits and bad entities. So again, I found that very fascinating to visit. So at this time, again, we're at the Osage Reservation. And again, we're here to hear the Osage people's stories. And one of the first persons that we've called upon, she's a well-known elder, well-respected. I think they got songs about her. It talks about those ways like that. No, I'm just kidding. But at this time, I want you to give your undivided attention to Miss Margot Gray.
Thank you, Chris. Well, I think it was over at Pawhuska, I told a story. You can see this picture behind me. This is the superintendent's office. Can y'all see that? I'll move over here. That building, don't even ask me when it was built, because I'm sure it was around in the late 1800s. And when, in 1994, we had two forms of government here at Osage. We had the National Council and we had the Tribal Council. That's when we were fighting for that one person, one vote, and a three-branch form of government, which we have right now. But back then, we won a lawsuit, and so I was working for the side that was the National Council. And that was the building that they give us, and where Chief Standing Bear's office today, the old BIA building. So these buildings have been around as long as Osage, as we've been here at Osage. So we set up, I worked for the National Council, and from day one, we knew that there was not only the council people there, but also there were other things there. You could feel it in the air. We just knew that we weren't alone in that building. Because no one wanted to be alone in that building. If you went to lunch, we're just closing down and we're all going to lunch at one time. And so it's just that sense that you know. So I could tell you day by day every story that happened, that something happened. Some days the oven would turn on by itself. Other days the temperature would get so cold. Other days doors would just be slamming upstairs. So upstairs is where the council had their offices. They shared offices up there. Down below, it's a house that was made for a family, obviously. But we had set up the National Council office in the living room. There was a fireplace there. We set a desk. We had two desks that was there. So there was always myself and then an assistant. And we would prepare all the booklets for the council. They had their meetings on Saturday mornings. So on Friday, we would be running all the paperwork for the next day. We didn't do everything like we have on our phones. We could see all the information. This is when we ran booklets out. So there we were running booklets, and the young lady who was working with me, Melanie Quinton, she had to leave because her had young kids. And so I said, well, I'll stay and finish these booklets. Well, I had trouble with the copier that night. And so it was around almost midnight by the time I just had the last bunch to get done. And I talk about this story because we know that evil exists. And evil will roam late at night. That's what my dad said. Nothing good ever happens after midnight. And I always remember that in my head. Like, it's almost midnight. So there I was putting those booklets together. I had my the music on. This is when we had just CD players playing our music, and just listening to waiting for the booklets to be run. And they were like 2 or 3 inches high. There was a lot of information. Then I'd have to take it, 3-hole punch it, put it in there. But this time, all of a sudden, I could feel the room get really cold. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I went outside and it was fine. This was in the fall. I would say like Indian summer weather. It's where you don't need a jacket, but it's just nice enough and it's not burning hot out. So there I was, I went outside and thought, oh my gosh, so I went and I checked the thing, wasn't even on. So as I was sitting there, I was listening to music, and then I could hear, like right here on the side of my right side, I heard, have you all been to the zoo and you hear like a lion roar? That sound where it just bellows throughout the whole park. That's what this sounded like. It was this growl, this guttural growl. And I mean, I just froze. I just froze right in my tracks right there, and I was like, oh my God. I'm thinking, you go through your mind, trying to figure out what could that be. Is it on the radio? Couldn't be. So I went and turned the radio off. Was it the copier? Did something jam up? No, it wasn't that either. So anyway, I looked at my keys on my desk, and I heard the growl again. And my grandma was a very traditional Osage woman, Nettie Lettrell, but she's also Catholic in her faith. And she said, when you're ever in trouble, you just say, Our Father. Just get out and pray in your head if you can. Just say whatever you can. I couldn't even get Our Father out. I was frozen. And so that growl came, and it came louder and louder. So then I ran over to my desk, I grabbed my keys, I walked out of that door. I didn't, as usual, I would have locked all the doors throughout, turned the lights off, and left. And there's something that told me when I got my car, do not look at that building. And so I didn't. And I could hear, so as I drove away, I just happened to look I didn't look at the building, but I just looked in my rear view. And at the very top, you can see where the A-frame hits. That's a hallway. There was no lights on up there, but there was this red glow. And I'm telling you, I got home, called my mom, told her what happened. She said, we better call the police, tell them to go lock that door up. So I did, and then the next day, as council came in, I said, I didn't finish these booklets, and here's why. So I was telling them about it. So they burned cedars right then, went all through there. And that's just one thing that happened. That was, to me, the most evilest feeling that I felt the presence in that building. And so, that building has seen a lot of people go through it, and I'm sure there's other people who have worked. Can you raise your hand if anyone ever worked in the superintendent's office? There we go. There'll be some more of these stories. Then the next story, won't be as long as that first one. That one was the worst. The second one is when Melanie and I were sitting there, and this is like springtime. So at springtime, we had the front door open, and it was just really pretty in there at that time. And so we were working, we had our two desks, and there's flanked by we have a desk here, on the right and the left, and there's a fireplace. So we're both looking at our screens, but we're not looking forward. And in the middle of the living room, when you first walk in there, there's this huge staircase, and it goes upstairs, and obviously, and then when you come down at the bottom, it goes to the right or to the left. I think they boarded it up since then. But it had this orange, goldish carpet throughout, this big shag carpet. And so I heard someone walking around. I said, did someone come in to work today? Because some of the council would sometimes come in. She says, no, no one's been in. And so I was sitting there, and then I'm facing this way. So here's the staircase. And to my right, I see, I would say, every bit of a 6'3" Native American, I'm saying Osage man, in a morning suit, which is like, it had tails, and it was cut off right here, and he had a top hat on, a black top hat. And you could see that he had some kind of boot on. And you know how some people just walk down the steps? Well, he didn't walk down the steps. He kind of walked down the steps. And then by this I'm looking, and then when he got to the bottom of the steps, he turned right, and he just disappeared. So I looked over at Melanie, and this happened obviously within seconds. I looked at Melanie, and I said, did you see? She goes, that Indian man? I go, with the black suit? She goes, with that big hat? And I go, yes. So it was confirmed, we both had seen the same thing. And I go, where did he go? And we got up, we walked around and we looked. He wasn't there. There was nobody there. So that was the second scariest. And then the third one was around Christmas time. And I was decorating, Melanie was typing, she was doing something there. And I could feel, so I'm standing and here's the fireplace right here, putting decorations on it. And Melanie's probably about where that end of that table is from where I'm at. And I could feel something tug on my sweater. And I looked, I go, what you need? And she goes, what are you talking about? I said, did you not just tug on my shirt? She goes, no. And I said, okay. Well, I said, well, something did, because it was short, because it came down from real low here. So I kept on. About 2 or 3 minutes later, she goes, oh my God. And I said, what? She goes, and then she could see where at the end of where my sweater was, there was some movement, that someone was moving it, and I could feel the tug. And I said, I knew that someone had been there. But those are just some of the stories. I could go on and on about how I've taken people through that building, and there's presence in there. And I think there's more than, I think there's several entities that are in there. I just know who they are. I don't know. But we did do one little test. I wish Sean Standing Bear was here because he could back up this story. We were telling him, at the time, he was the museum director. He came over and we were telling him what was going on. And so he said, well, I'll tell you what you do. Let's get some salt. At the end of the day, we're going to make these little cones, and I'll bring some Dixie cups. We're going to fill them full of water, and we're going to put them all upstairs, because that's where a lot of the activity was as well. So we went upstairs, went in each room, we'd all filled up the little cups, set them out, made a little cone of salt, and then we left for the day. And we all said, when we get back in the morning, we'll wait for all of us to get here, and then we'll go in and look in and check it out. So around 8 o'clock the next day, we go in, we go upstairs. One room, nothing, the little cone of salt was not untouched. The cups were there. The next room, it looked like someone took their finger and just ran it through that that salt, and knocked over the water. The other one, there was nothing there. Someone it was just gone. Could never find that other cup. But this went all the way through there. And as soon as we left, we heard a big pop. Went upstairs, and they had like these big round bulbs down the hallway there was some that had covered some of the lights, and it had just broke. So that's just some of the stories. I'm sure there's others that people can tell, but thank you for listening. And I was up there for probably 2 years before I started getting into law enforcement. And so I was in charge of going and checking the doors of every building, and then also going inside of them. So it just isn't the superintendent's, it's the BIA office. It's it used to be what they call the White House. It's no longer there. It's where the Osage Clinic is now. And then the BIA building, and also the museum. So I think there's more stories from all of them. So anyway, thank you, Chris.
Oh, let's give her another round of applause. Also, like I said, she's a very interesting and also very helpful individual. She helps a lot of people out here in this community. So again, let's give her another round of applause. Margot Gray. Now again, she was talking about those Osages and their salt. I know a lot about that. Boy, every time you see them eat, boy, they got that. Sometimes I think they're getting ready to start that song like that. No. But anyway, again, we're here to hear some stories. So if you guys got a story, you guys start getting them ready, because I'm going to start asking from the crowd if you have a story. Again, that old Indian tradition is I tell you a story, You give me a story. So the Osage people have already told you a story. So it'd be nice to hear from you other guys here in just a little bit. Now again, another individual I'm getting ready to call up. He's a well-versed young Osage man. You know, he goes up to school in Colorado, Fort Lewis. You know, he's got many babes up there. You know, when he sets up that drum, he sings. They braid his hair right there at the drum, like that. They fix him that meal, like that. You know, that's how well known he is up there. So, anyway, let's put our hands together and pay attention to Mr. Noah Shadlow.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's a good thing my fiance isn't here to hear you say that. Howe da he ba she no sha lo sha she upbring, wa sho she wa sha she sha she upbring. Zang zo le nika she only mix she, ang hu dang ga nika shika only mix she, dang wa only mix she. Le kon se zang ni wa we mo pi kon bra, wa na he o da ke mélange o da ke we upbring. Hello, my name is Noah Shadlow. I come from the Zanzoli district. My Osage name is Washoshe. That translates into English as a warrior or one who is brave. And I said, I have a little people story to tell you all tonight. This is my own experience from a couple years ago. It was about 4 years ago. This happened down there in the Hominy Indian village. And I know I don't know if anybody knows about what goes on in that village, but a lot of spooky things go on there. This is we had my Aunt Lois had just passed away, and we had got everything ready and everything went good, but we needed someone to go down there and watch her house while we were getting everything ready for us to move in there, and. My parents asked my little brother, he said no. They asked my 2 little sisters, and they said no. So as the Elomba, it kind of fell to me. I got voluntold to go down there. And I made my little pallet on the couch there, and I started sleeping down there, just watching the house, making sure everything was okay. Nobody got in there, or no critters or nothing. And the first 2 weeks went by, not a hitch, there wasn't anything that went wrong. I felt pretty comfy down there. I turned on her old propane heater down there, had a little fire going, and it was really nice. I just enjoyed my time down there. And then one night, I just got done singing with some of my friends up here in Pawhuska, and I got back a little late. It was about, I think, midnight, 12:30. We were like right after midnight, and I took my shower, got dressed, got in my bed clothes, and getting ready for bed. I go to lay down and fall asleep. Around 1 or 2 in the morning, I hear something skittering around. I was thinking it might be a little mouse or something, because she had that old wood paneling in there. That old grandma and grandpa wood paneling. And I thought there was a little mouse chewing through it or something, making a little hole, trying to get out and get whatever kind of crumbs I had laying around. So I walked around, didn't see nothing, and then I went back and laid down. And then I started to hear stomping coming from the back hallway. There's a little hallway. There's the front, there's the living room, and then off to the left, there's this little hallway that goes back to the other 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And I hear some stomping going towards that back bedroom. And at that time, that's what kind of started to spook me. So I got up and I looked back there, and I didn't see nothing again. And it was a little bit harder, but I went back to sleep. And then maybe an hour later, it was about 3:30 in the morning, I feel something tugging on my hair. And at that point, I just started growing my hair out, so it wasn't too long. It was almost like an Indian mullet, it looked like. And I felt something pulling on my hair, and and I snapped up real quick, and I see something scurry off into the that little hallway back there. And after that, you know, I took that as it not wanting me in there, that Milonchka. So I got my things together, and I bolted out the house. I didn't even bother shutting the door. And ran back down to Mom and Dad's, woke them up and said, hey, there's someone down there, we gotta go check this out. And my dad, you know, I don't know if I know some of you know my dad, William Shadlow. I woke him up and said what happened. He kind of looked up. He said, oh, it's fine, they do that all the time. Then he laid back down and went to sleep. Suffice it to say, that was the last night I stayed down there by myself. But that is my Milonchka experience. I know a lot of people have different Milonchka stories, but that one's mine. Here, Goshen.
Sure appreciate that, boy. That's a good one. Again, you know, you guys start getting your stories together. We've had a good Osage lineup here. So again, we're getting ready to open it up here in just a little bit. But right now, I'm getting ready to call Miss Veronica Pipestem. You guys give her a round of applause.
Thank you. So my story, one of the first ones I think I'll tell tonight is, oh gosh, it was about 6 months ago, maybe 7, no, it was longer than that. It was in April, I think, April or May, it doesn't even matter. I had gone out to Cahokia Mountains. For those of you who may not be familiar with that, that's it's over in the St. Louis area. It's on the Illinois state side. It's about maybe 40 minutes northeast of St. Louis. And it's an ancient mound city that Osages and a bunch of other tribes, we all descend from those people about 1,000 years ago. And they built these enormous mounds. And I was doing some research for work, and I'd gone out there for a work trip. And so the archaeologist that was kind of taking us around, we stayed out there for 8 hours, maybe 9 hours that day, just walking around those mounds and different areas, and he had talked about what was on them, what they thought was on them, you know, things like that, and the research and the digs that they'd done. And the first thing about that I thought was interesting is that whole 9 hours we were standing and walking. At one point, and it wasn't even on the big mound, there's a really large one called Monk's Mound, and I think it's the biggest mound, biggest man-made structure besides Teotihuacan in the Western Hemisphere. But it wasn't that mound, it was a smaller mound that was a little bit older, and we were walking around by it, and I just, I felt something or heard something, and it just told me, just put your hand on the ground. And I did, and when I put my hand down on the ground, it felt like the earth was moving. And there was, I have a hard time describing this feeling because it was just teeming with energy. And it almost felt like, if I could describe it the way I felt like I could see it, but I couldn't see it. That's the other thing, I have a hard time describing this. It felt like things were moving back and forth really fast. But the other thing I also felt, and this kind of sounds funny when I say it out loud, but I could have stayed out there for 16, 24 hours and I would have been awake and full of energy the whole time. And that was also a very strange feeling. I just never got tired when we were out there. So that's the main part of the park that we were at. And then we went back into this area that's on the south side. I think it's the south side of the park. And there is a causeway or a road that was built by the people that live there. And it's basically a raised road that's made out of dirt, and I think it's like a mile or a mile and a half long. And just to see that engineering feat of people who have made a road that's that long and goes in a straight line is pretty amazing. They needed constant access to this other burial mound at the other end of it. That's the theory behind that. Anyway, when you go down that causeway, it's called Rattlesnake Causeway, we started to walk in there, and most of the rest of the park, there's some trees scattered around, but it's pretty open. But this part of the park it's a marshy, kind of boggy wetland area, and so there's a lot of trees, heavily wooded in that area. And we went in there, and there was a group of about 5 of us that had gone in there, and when we walked in, the first thing I saw, there were about 4 or 5 like does or fawns. They were little deer, they were still spotted, they weren't fully grown, and they were really close to us. And so I kind of noticed that, and I thought, well, okay. But that entire time, and we were probably back there a good hour and a half, in that, very heavily timbered wetland area. And they would kind of go back behind trees, and then they would come back out, but they stayed with us the entire time we were in there. So that was the first kind of interesting thing that I saw. Then the next thing that we noticed, or I noticed, I guess, in some of these trees, there were these real big furrows, that had been burrowed out of the side of the tree trunk, but they were way taller than animal furrows. They'd go up probably this high. And they were in weird shapes. They were in like diamond shapes, or they would be like this, but they just didn't look like an animal made them. And so I kept noticing that as we walked through, and of course, the guy that was talking to us was talking to us about 1,000 different things, but I was really struck by these trees. And then all of a sudden I look over at one of those trees with one of those big furrows in them, and there's a crane and a rattlesnake or some kind of snake, and it's standing up, and a squirrel and a fox. And they're just standing there shoulder to shoulder, still as they could be, just watching as we walk by. And I'm thinking, that's so weird, because snakes usually eat squirrel, these are animals that don't get along with each other, usually. And typically they're not gonna stand there as still as they were. The other thing, before I saw that first set of animals, it got really quiet in there. Usually you can hear birds chirping, different things, but it got dead quiet. And that's when I noticed that first set of animals that was right there. And they watched us, again, their heads turned as we walked by. And I thought, man, it's unusual. So then we keep going down this causeway, and we stop, talk, and then as this man's talking, right behind him, about 20 feet, there's another set of animals that normally don't get along. They could be chasing each other, eating each other, or fighting. A couple of birds, like a quail or some kind of smaller bird. But it was, that pattern happened about 4 or 5 times as we walked around in there. And to me, just from hearing older stories, I'm not going to say their names, but that's those LPs, those little spirits, and they had disguised themselves. And I wasn't afraid of them. There was nothing fearful about them. I honestly felt like they were just kind of glad to see me. They hadn't seen anybody like me in a long time, I guess, or Osage, somebody that they were related to, and they were just happy that I was there. But it was a real strange experience, like nothing I've ever experienced before. But to have these animals stand up straight and just their heads would watch as we walked by. So we left a little something for them on our way out, just to kind of make sure that we were trying to be respectful and just acknowledge that they were there. So that was one of the experiences I've had at Cahokia State Park. So thank you for your time.
All right, that was a good one. At this time, we've got a well-respected Osage elder here that's wanting to tell us his story. Now let's give him his undivided attention here. I don't know if he wants me to bring the mic to him, or can you? We'll get you a chair up here. You all right? Let's give him a round of applause.
Hello, all you scary people. When I was a youngster, which was quite a long time ago, apparently I had a pretty vivid imagination. And I used to see things. Sometimes these things would run along beside the car, looking in the glass windows, the doorways, looking at, watching us. And my granddad had some relatives that were married into the Salty family. And the mansion, not the one on top of the hill, but the one across the street from the school. And we used to go up there, and they had a bearskin rug. And I used to lay on that thing all the time, and I'd use it, its mouth was open like that, and I'd use that as a pillow. But I always wanted it right there by the front door, and I always look up at the front door, and I could see somebody watching us. And so, man, his hair was, I don't like to use that term roach, because roach is a bug or it's a spare monster. Cut like that, and looking at us. But I wouldn't tell anybody because I knew they wouldn't believe me. All of a sudden, you're just making this stuff up. So, and then my mom's sister, her husband had a car, a 1930, 28, 29, a touring car, four doors, sedan, front seat, back seat, rag top, had plastic windows. You either snapped them in or zipped them in, I forget which. And so we used to go out towards the Gray Horse. That's there by where his parents lived. And I'd look out the window and I could see a man run along beside us. The same kind of guy. And I thought, well, what's he running along? Why don't I just get on a running board and just hitch a ride? You know? I didn't tell anybody about that either. And then one day, years later, and I used to hear people talk about the little people, the hairy man, and depending on where I am, who I'm talking to, I call him, around here I'll call him the hairy man, I don't call him Sasquatch or Bigfoot, other people do. I got a friend of mine, she says she's from up north, up in northern Nevada and southern Idaho. She says those people have songs about them, and they talk about them like they were real people, and maybe they are, I don't know. But a few years ago, I was in my car, I don't remember which car, and if I could remember which car I was in, I could tell you about when this happened. I'm driving east on Highway 20 going to Hominy, or going towards Hominy. And I've never seen it. My mom said, oh, there's no such thing as a hairy man. But my mom used to tell Seth to make his kids come in at night time. Other people say, well, yeah, there is such a thing, because I know people who knew people who saw one. Okay, you know. So I've always been skeptical. I'm a lot less skeptical now. Because there's just, these creatures have been seen all over the world. So I'm driving down Highway 20 east towards Hominy, and there's a little hitch in the road, and you get down there and you kind of turn, it's kind of south, you're going southeast image. It's been moving from southeast, you go down the hill towards Sycamore Creek, and across the creek is Nappy's house. But that barbed wire fence line just keeps going straight, and there's a couple of big trees there. And I looked at them this afternoon, and there's a smaller tree there, and there he was. Now, I'm not making this up, and I hit the brakes, I looked at the rearview mirrors, all of my mirrors, trying to see, did I see what I think I saw? Well, by then, when you're doing 60, 65 miles an hour, well, they're out of your vision. So, and I didn't see anymore. So, and then people would ask me, years later, they'd say, did you see what you thought you saw? I said, well, I think I did. I don't know, but I think I did. And I could describe him. Nobody in here looks like that, let me tell you. Very tall, very big, very thick neck, long, coarse, kind of a brown hair, light brown hair. Looked like he gotta be playing the tackle for the Green Bay Packers or something like that. But I couldn't see him from the front, so can't tell you what his face was like. I was only from the back. A big, hairy guy, coarse hair. And then I'm going down the road, and I slow down a little bit, and I get to the Sycamore Creek, and I just keep on going. I'm going to Homily. But every time I go by there, or like I did twice this morning, I think about that. Wasn't scared, nothing. It's kind of surprised. Did I really see what I think I saw? Well, I think I did. So, what he was doing out there, I don't know, you know. But some other time, he's standing under a tree. That's what he's doing. He's standing underneath a tree. Another time, a few years ago, me and a couple of friends of mine were out in western Fairfax, 9 miles from nowhere out there in western Fairfax. And west of where we were is a big, deep ravine with real steep sides. And I was hunting in the big rock, what we call the big rocks. And thought, well, shoot, I'm going in. Time to go to lunch anyway. That's the way the deer hunt would go out there, sit around, and go to lunch. And so get back to pickup, and we're waiting on the third member of our party to come in. And we hear this real loud scream, a roar like thing. They said, what was that? I said, I don't know. You know, go find out. No. Do you? No. And I said, I'll tell you what it sounded like. It sounded like people who hunt coyotes and stuff. They have these little coyote calls. It's a rabbit in distress or something like this. And the coyotes will come and they'll look for it and then they get shot for the trouble. Well, this sounded to me like something that was in distress, that was hurt, that was injured, like it could have fallen off into that deep ravine and had a broken leg or something like this. But we never did go see him. So the third member of our party come in, he said, why didn't you go see him? It was because it's scary. If we got the gun, might not be enough. You know? So we didn't go see him. And then this guy's sister, she owned that property, she wouldn't let us hunt out there anymore. So serve her right. Maybe she would get eaten by those things. But that is about the tail of my tale. I think I saw what I saw. When my grandpa was alive, he was born in 1890. They used to talk about stuff like this. And we'd go up north of Pawhuska to go fishing. We'd stay out there for several days at a time. And I was never afraid because I was with my grandpa. He knew everything. Him and his brother, they knew everything. Except one time when a storm comes through, and it's real loud noise, a real cold wind, and it was a hailstorm. That cold wind was the wind coming off the hail. I was more scared of that than I was what I thought I saw going on there. And then some years later, I figured out that those real long hailstones that you see, they're associated with tornadoes because they keep circulating the rain and the hail. It keeps going up as they get too heavy to circulate and they fall. And then they're associated with tornadoes. But anyway, so I haven't seen anything like that. Never have seen little people. I've seen all kinds of wild animals out there, and anymore, when I go out to the woods out there by the river and out there in the bend, I go armed. I take a gun with me because there are animals out there that can eat you, kill you and eat you. They're hogs, wild hogs. And so I don't see those. I see where they've been, where they've rooted around and eat stuff. But we have a guy who's got that lease, and he goes out there and he kills them and processes and makes ribs and hams and bacon, all sorts of stuff out of it. Anyway, that's all I know. Any questions? I'm not going to answer them. Do you got any questions? All right.
All right, he psyched me out there. All right, at this time, we're going to open the floor. And so I've already had someone come up, and they wanted to tell a story tonight. Miss Anya Roanhorse, come on down. Where you at? And if you want to tell a story, you come sign up with Veronica back here. She's taking names, so.
Thank you. It's Anya, by the way. Sorry, but don't worry, I've been getting my whole life. This story is no match for the LP stories, the Dear Woman stories. Don't expect much from this story, all right? This story actually happened around 4 years ago. It was for my 11th birthday. It was a Stranger Things themed birthday party, mainly 80s. So we had this, my mom, she has this building. It's this 2-story building. Downstairs is like a gallery, the big grand gallery, which you probably know. And then upstairs is the Airbnb. So the plan was, we were gonna have the party downstairs with like family and stuff like that. And upstairs was gonna be like a little slumber party, whatever, a bunch of cousins. And people were like sleeping on the floor. There was like 10 of my cousins and like my friends and stuff, so everyone was just pick a spot, lay down, grab a blanket. And it was like, it was after the party, we went upstairs, it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And my mom was there, she's like, go to sleep, I'm done with all the yelling. And I was like, okay. So we all kind of picked a spot and we laid on the ground and we fell asleep. A couple of people got up to use the bathroom, but that's about it. But the next morning we were all talking and we all heard somebody get up and go to the kitchen and they were just pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for like 30 minutes. And she was like, who went into the kitchen and was pacing back and forth? Who was doing that? And we were all like, well, we were gonna ask you. Nobody went into the kitchen. So, freaked me and my friends out. And then there's a couple other little things here. This is not an evil spirit. She's, pretty chill. She moves stuff around sometimes. My mom and I, we were walking upstairs one time. Nobody was in the building, and we hear the loudest. So it was a ghost with a cold. We go upstairs. Nobody's there. We should really leave a tissue box. And then my mom told me this story. She was upstairs and she was fixing some things, and we used to have a piano downstairs. And she heard somebody kind of like, that person wasn't really playing a song, they were just kind of like fiddling with the keys, and she's like, oh, the electrician must be here, I'm just curious. And then the second she got downstairs, the electrician pulled up and there was nobody there. And she was like, you weren't fishing with the piano? And he was like, no, that wasn't me. She's like, great, okay. So we've just had a couple little bumps in the night, nothing much, nothing compared to seeing LPs. I'm not ready for that day to come. Anyway, that's it, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
All right, we got a special storyteller. He's ranged from Pawhuska, Oklahoma. He's an elder. He's so old, they say he had to put toothpicks underneath his eyes to keep him up. No, he's a well-versed individual. And let's put our hands together for Mr. Tolly Redcorn.
I don't need a chair. Osage Reservation Pawhuska, Tawagawita Sijawashaki. Sa Tawahu Jajiwi Tawaku Goldsin. I'm Tolly, I'm from the Pawhuska, Oaxaca people. And I just want to tell you 3 quick stories. Our sister asked me when I walked in, y'all see this building here? I work for the tribe. And we do a lot of construction. And I like this building. I know every window in this. I've measured every opening, every doorway. And this old porch here, it was built later. So the original just looks like this, without that porch. And then this is a widow walk, they call it, and that needs to come off. So we hired a company to come over and fix it up, redo the pointing on the stonework, and make sure the structure was good and solid, get the roof in place because they want to do things on the inside. So I got my orders from my boss and the key. Not too long ago, we just finished this project. And I drove the tribal vehicle up there. And when I pulled up, Casey was walking this. He was walking around looking in all the windows. So I got out of my car and I walked up. I said, "What's going on?" And then he said somebody in the police department at Pawhuska called them over at the main office and said there's a woman in there trapped and can't get out. He said, "Walk around the base, I'll be up here." And I walked all the way around. We looked in, we opened the door, we walked in, nobody. I remember looking at the building over here, the main office, and everybody's looking. So, true story. The second one I want to tell is I was lead singing at a Ponca church, I was after Doug Eagle, and he loved the Dallas Cowboys, so I'd go and sing songs in their way. And one night we all left, we were crowded like this. We were singing all those Indian hymns and talking and praying. And so I walked out there. Well, I left my jacket, so I went back to that church. It was just dark. And I walked up to that church door and I pulled that door. As soon as I pulled it, I heard an old man start talking in that church, yelling stuff in Indian. And I stopped, and then I heard whatever he said, that whole church erupted and repeated exactly what he said. It's all pitch black, and then everything just went quiet. So I just walked in, grabbed my jacket, and I ran out. And then who all goes down to 60, Highway 60? There's a lot going on that flashing light. Do y'all notice that? Anybody? I've seen people standing in the road. I've seen people sitting on that bridge in the middle of the night. I don't know if anybody's seen that. Put your hands up if you've seen kind of strange things out there. So anyway, I always have, but my last one, my brother-in-law, he married a woman out west, and he was driving out to see his kids out in the middle of nowhere, and he said, "I just pulled over, and there was a rock off the side of the highway. So I pulled my car, nobody around." He said, "And I sat on that rock. And I was just beautiful. I was looking all over the mountains. And he said, all of a sudden I looked down the road, there was 3 little white kids running toward me." And they kept running. He said, I looked, and he said, I just got in the car and I just took off. So anyway, thank y'all.
Man, that was scary. I gotta go back that way. I don't know. Anyway, the floor is open, and our next storyteller is David Murray. Where you at, David? All right. I know this one's gonna be scary.
So let's get right to it. I see a lot of faces in the crowd. You can probably tell a lot of the same stories I can. But this one kind of correlates with Margot's story and Holly's story about the superintendent's home.
Can you hear me now? Is this one working? No, it don't work. So, this story, like I was saying, correlates with Margot's story and Polly's story about the superintendent's home. I had my own encounter. So, I have to go back to about 1998, 97, 99, somewhere in there. And the program I was working with, sometimes we got sent out with the maintenance guys because, you know, we just wanted something to do sometimes. So we got called in to go with the maintenance guys to set up for a meeting with the Minerals Council. So they had this great big table in this little dining or dinner room, dining room or whatever. This table's just big enough where you have to kind of scoot in to get to your seat, because that's how big this table is. And the rest of the maintenance guys, they're you know, happy in the fact that somebody else is going to do the setup instead of them. So we're like, we're going to go out and take a smoke break. You know, that was common back then. And so me and a coworker of mine, his name was Roger. So we would tell him we'll set up the tables and stuff, or the chairs. So you guys go ahead. So they went outside on the front porch, and Roger kind of disappeared. And then I just got busy setting up the tables, or the chairs, and I said, Roger, come help me set up these chairs so we can all go out and have a cigarette. I smoked cigarettes back then too. And I heard a voice, "Mom want to go to the restroom." Like, okay, I wasn't fully paying attention. You know, I could kind of see there's the doorway, entranceway. You can kind of see the staircase from the angle that I was moving the chairs around, and I just mostly heard it. You hear it go up the stairs, and there's a bathroom right at the top of the stairs on the left-hand side, and I could hear that door close. Okay, you know, I could hear the toilet flush, hear the door open. I could hear the sink running from him washing his hands. So I don't think nothing of it. It's like I hear him coming down the stairs. I'm like, Roger, come help me out. Do this other side. It's hard for me to get over there. And nothing. So I scoot around, do the other side, and then I go outside. And there's Roger on the front porch. I said, how come you didn't come in and help me finish the chairs? He goes, well, I came out here with the maintenance guys. I was like, no, you went to the bathroom. You told me you were going to the bathroom. I said, no, I didn't go to the bathroom. I came out here with them. So I was hearing somebody walk around up there, talking to them, and kind of answering me. And yeah, it was about 10 years before I went back in that building. And it's been at least 10 years since I've been in there since. So, with that story, I have another story about the superintendent's home. But this story isn't my story. This is a story of a friend of mine that told me his encounter, one of his encounters. He was on maintenance, but after my story, when I set up the table and stuff, this is probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years later, when I knew I didn't want to go back in that house. So he's telling me about on maintenance, and they're up in the upstairs room in one of the back rooms. Now, after I figured out that I had an encounter after it happened, I didn't want to go back there and find out which room this was. So he was telling me that they were all up there painting these rooms. They had to be repainted. So they were putting coats and coats and paint on this one particular room, and something orange kept bleeding through on this one particular wall. And everybody was, I think it was lunchtime or whatever, so they all wanted to go to lunch.
but this guy didn't. His name was Frank. And so he decided to stay and keep putting coats on. He's like, I want to see how many coats it's going to take before it covers up this orange that's bleeding through this wall. So he's putting it on. Everybody else leaves. And he said, there's a closet in this room. I think he said it had a sliding door, maybe French doors, I'm not sure. I think it was a sliding door. And he said he could see out of his peripheral vision, that door kept kind of open up just a little bit, about like that. And he'd be painting with the roller, and he'd go over there and close that door, you know. And he'd go back over and start doing his painting again. He did that 2 or 3 times. And Frank was very religious. He carried this little Bible in his pocket all the time. So he pulls this Bible out, and he faces towards these doors, these closet doors, and he starts just reading. He told me what scripture he was reading. I can't remember. And he said he is just concentrating and focusing on looking at his little book and reading from it. So he's reading this small Bible, and after a couple of minutes, he sees the door start creeping open, and keeps coming open and keeps coming open. And then, not looking directly at it, just with this peripheral vision, he can see something come out of that door, out of that closet. And he's still reading, and this thing, he said, is kind of kneeled down looking at him. And it's growling, much like the growl that Mario was talking about, a deep growl. He said, but this thing was real close to him, like it was circling like some kind of animal. And he said the thing that he could hear, besides the growling, was it was grinding its teeth at him. And he said he never looked. He could just see like the shadow of this thing. And he said it got right by his ear and started grinding its teeth at him and growling and just making a fuss, trying to put fear into him. Because these kind of things, it said that they thrive on fear. So it went all the way around him, and he didn't do anything. He just kept reading from the Bible. And that thing just kind of backed back into the closet. And it said, slam that door as hard as it could. As soon as he did that, he said he was out of there. I would have been too. And this would be a good place to end the story, but the story doesn't end. So, a few days go by. Weekend comes, weekend goes. And so, he's back at work, and they're all there at each other, trying to tease him, you know, let's go back, we're going to see you up there, put another coat of paint in that wall, you know, I'm not going there. And he said after about a week or so, he started getting phone calls from this superintendent's home. He said some of them were at midnight, and some of them were at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, this is where the police department was and dispatch and stuff at the time. But only the strange thing is they closed at regular business hours, which was, or they closed at 5, I think. So at 5 o'clock, the dispatch left for the night. There's nobody in that place. It's locked up from 5 o'clock in the evening until 6:30 or 7 o'clock the next morning. So he kept getting these phone calls from this place, and had talked to the dispatch lady like she needed him to come up there right now at 3 a.m. And then another call. Well, you need to come up here right now. It's midnight. You know, there's trouble. You know, one of the officers or something. It's like, well, I'm maintenance. So, you know, this went on for 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. He stopped getting the calls from, at least I think he did. But, yeah, that was a great corn story. And yeah, I don't want to go up there even more now. So, and that's my stories.
All right, is everybody having a good time? Are you guys having a good time? All right, are you guys ready to turn it up a notch? Who's ready to take these lights out? I guess so. So anyway, all right, we'll keep them on. Our next storyteller is another respected elder, Miss Paula Stabler. Put your hands together for her.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. What a crowd. I can't believe all these people around here. This is great. But, okay, so I've got two little bitty stories I want to tell, and then I've got that have to do with the hill, and then the other one's about the village. But first, I want to say that I do believe in ghosts. I've had lots of ghostly encounters. I believe in spirits. I believe there's good spirits, and there's bad spirits, and it's hard to tell which is which unless you kind of know the key to all of it. I also will tell you that my dad said, quit telling these stories because people will think you're crazy. And I just can't quit telling them because they're really cool stories. So, and not all of you know, I live out in the village, and of course I've worked on the hill since about '98. And so I've had lots of encounters. I've been in that superintendent's house a million times. I'm the one that put the newspaper staff in there for about 5 years and made them work up there, and they had to learn to cope with all the spirits and ghosts up there and stuff. And so I wasn't going to tell these little stories till Margot told hers, and so I can tack on to what she's got going. So this is, and this is about some scaredy cats, because we used to have to go in that house all the time for all kinds of things. And so I was there one day, and I was with Harrison Shackelford and Frank Redcorn, and there was two other guys that worked in maintenance then. I can't remember who they were. But we were over at that house doing something, probably getting ready to move a crew in or move a crew out or, you know, something like that. Anyway, so we're standing there talking, and there's two staircases in that house, one in the front of the house and one at the back of the house. And so we're standing there talking. I think we were in the front of the house, and all of a sudden we hear water just gushing. I mean, just pouring. And so we stand there and kind of start walking around a little bit, and then we realize it's down in the basement. So we go over toward the basement. I said, well, go down there and see what's going on. They all went, no way. I'm not going in that basement. And I said, you guys are nuts. So I just moved them aside, and I went down in the basement. And a pipe had shimmed off, and there was just water pouring everywhere. I said, get down here, we've got to move some stuff there. And I looked up at the top of that staircase, and they're all standing there going. And they would not come down those stairs, not for nothing. So anyway, I wanted to tell that one. So then the next one, I've worked at the BIA, I've worked at the clinic, and I've worked for the chief's office, and so I've been in all those buildings. And people are right, at night when you're there, there's typewriters going, there's elevators going up and down, and you just get used to ignoring it while you're working. So this was when I worked at the clinic, and we would really burn the midnight oil there and stay there. Sometimes we worked till midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 or 3 of us. And so this was a particular night when we were working really late, and what we do is pile all our kids up at my house. And then that meant one of us had to leave and go get dinner and take it over there, or go get movies, or go get whatever to entertain them, and back and forth. So the girl I was working with, she had left the building to go out and fool with the kids. And then I was sitting there just working away at my desk, and all of a sudden I saw a figure out of my peripheral vision come around a corner and come down kind of a little aisle way and go into the office next door to me. Well, I thought it was her. That was her office. And I really just didn't say anything and just kind of kept on working. I thought that's really odd that she didn't say anything when she came in, right? I'm back, or, you know, the kids were doing this or something like that. But I was really involved in what I was working on. And then all of a sudden I see something come out of that office and come in and stand right beside me. And it was a white vapor. And I had never seen a spirit like that, a white vapor. Anyway, it was just a white vapor that was just there, you know, and stuff. And that time I thought, I don't know what this is, so I got my purse and I left out the back door. So, but like I said, for the most part, I really am not afraid of spirits. I'm more afraid of real people than I am of spirits. So, I live out in the village, and we're kind of protective of our spirits out in the village. Several of the houses have spirits. There's lots of stories that go on as we've grown up and stuff, and so different ones in different houses, a little boy in one house and different things. Well, my grandmother died in 1996 on Sunday of the June dances. Now, she had been sick for a long time, and she was in a nursing home in Tulsa, and we were all up here for the dances. And in those days, I've got like 36 people in my family, kids and brothers and sisters, in-laws and outlaws and all that business. So in those days, this was in 96, kids were little, so we had cots all over the house, people just sleeping everywhere. And I would always get up early and start the coffee. So I got up that morning, just woke right up, felt good, got up out of my little cot, headed for the kitchen to make coffee, and just as I passed the threshold into my kitchen, my grandma's spirit passed right through me. And it was like a shockwave that went through me. But I knew it was her because I could smell her, I could taste her, I could feel her, and more than anything, I heard her. And what she said was, "Oh, Paula," in the most wonderful, exuberant voice, and that she was feeling good. And so that made me feel good. Now, when she would go into a coma, when she was in the hospital and stuff, I would have little experiences with her and, tell my folks, well, she's calling me, I need to go up there and stuff like that. But this was different. This was powerful, and this made me feel wonderful. I said, if I ever needed a confirmation of my Christian faith, that was it right there. So I felt good for just a moment there. And I started making the coffee, and I never heard him come in the back door, but my uncle came in the back door to tell me that she had passed. And then I realized what was going on, right? Okay, so that's normal for me, that's what happened. But when she did that, this is what I believe, that when she did that, she opened up a gate. She opened up something, some kind of a portal, because she was one that did not believe that there were mean ghosts. She believed in her faith was powerful, but she did not believe, matter of fact, she was another one that was like, don't tell these kind of things, because, people will just think you're nuts. But it happened. It happened for real. But it didn't end there. And what happened was I began to have experiences in my house of people everywhere. And I mean literally everywhere in my house. It was to the point where I was having people come spend the night with me every night because I couldn't go to sleep. They wouldn't let me go to sleep. But if somebody else was there, I didn't notice it so much. So it went on for weeks and then months. And I was telling everybody, they will not let me sleep. I don't know where they're coming from, but they're just everywhere. So as I would walk through, my hallway is just a little 6x6 room that connects all these rooms. And especially when I would walk through that hallway, there would just be people everywhere. So I walked through my house like this, because I thought, I don't want to make contact with them. I don't want to talk to them. I don't need to hear from them. And they don't need to hear from me. Just ignore them and they'll leave you alone. But they don't leave you alone. They just keep staring and staring and like I said, the cold vapors and all that kind of stuff, and the corners and stuff. And so I was telling everybody, I said, I need to have this house smoked. Well, my uncles were just like, just go on, you're fine. don't pay attention. I was opening doors and I was opening windows and I was asking them all to leave because I needed rest more than anything. Well, in that experience and with all the other experiences, and I've had numerous ones of them, especially with family members and stuff, I began to understand what was going on because I learned two things. I learned, first of all, that a lot of them carried a white handkerchief. And I had to figure out, and just one day, just all of a sudden, it occurred to me what that white handkerchief meant. And that white handkerchief meant they had something left behind that they needed taken care of. They were in mourning for something or someone here. Then the next thing, we talk about the little people. For me, those little people are not nice people, those are little evil people. And so when you see those little dark figures that are down close to the floor, then that's evil, and so I don't talk to them at all, ever, and try not to talk to any of them and stuff. But that was the two little things I had to figure out for myself. I love my ghosts. I still hear one once in a while, or I hear something once in a while. I hear a lot of them when I'm at the dances. I appreciate them. I asked an uncle one time, this is not a testimony, I promise. This is about my ghosts. But I asked my uncle one time, what did we believe, or how did we interpret death a long time ago in our old beliefs and stuff? And he said there's 4 phases to our death, and one of them is on this earth. And so I believe that's those people, that they're locked here on this earth and stuff. And so when you see them or hear them, appreciate them and be good to them. But do not talk to those little dark figures. Those aren't something that's good. So I wish it was a little scarier, but it wasn't, or it's not scary to me. But anyway, thank you all.
Boy, those were scary to me. We have some chairs up here if anybody's looking for a place to sit. We got some other chairs, and if we don't have enough chairs, let us know. We'll get some more chairs for people. So again, we want to make sure everybody has a place to sit. So anyway, with our next storyteller, his name is Mr. Jeffrey Cote. Come on down. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. How are you all doing? So, some of you may know this. Some of you might not know this, but I am a pastor. I'm the associate pastor at Osage Indian Baptist Church here in Pawhuska. And my ghost stories are a little bit different than everybody else's. I don't really get haunted, but when people get haunted, I get called a lot. And they ask me to come over. They either want me to pray for their friend, they want me to pray over their houses, and I have people ask me all the time. They're like, are you afraid of ghosts, or do ghosts scare you? I'm like, no, they don't scare me. I'm like, it's kind of hard to get scared of ghosts if you're performing exorcisms all the time. And they're like, what? What do you mean you perform exorcisms? I'm like, well, I'm going to share this story with y'all now. I had a friend that was recently married, and they moved into a house together, and they knew at the time, this was back in 2016, I was going to school at Victory Bible College, so it was before I went to Bacone, and if any of y'all know about Bacone's a pretty haunted place too. Everybody's got a story, and sometimes I'm in the building and they're always talking about the ghost stories, and I haven't had any experiences with them. But I thought it was interesting. Told my friends, if you ever have a problem with these kinds of things, call me up. I'll come over and I'll pray over your house for you. And they're like, we'll hold you to it. I'm like, all right. I know in the Gospel of Mark, in the end, in the Great Commission, it says, go forth into all the nations and preach to all of creation, is what it says. And then it says that one of the things that you'll do is that you will cast out devils. Also said that you would heal the sick, sorts of other things like that. But the key part of that passage I always like to point out to people is it says it's the believers that do this, not the unbelievers. So one day I had my friends call me. He's like, hey, we got some weird activity going on over here. I need you to come over. So I'm driving from Tulsa all the way to Collinsville. And I arrived, and they had a gate around their house, and a trail that leads up to their house. And as soon as I passed through that gate, I could feel something heavy on me. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. So I'm driving real slowly. I pull in, and it just feels eerie. You don't hear anybody. You don't hear anything. It's just quiet. So I walk in, knock on the door. He lets me in. And I said, before we can do this, you guys need to pray. I'm like, God, there'll be parts of this where I can't pray for you. You gotta be able to pray for yourselves. And so I taught them a prayer. I'm like, in the name of Jesus, leave. Simple as that. In the name of Jesus, leave. Also, I said things like, ask the Holy Spirit to fill you, be with you, protect you, things like that. And then we started going around the house. We started in the living room, and we went to the bedrooms. All the cabinets were opened. And then the one thing that I remember from that night is my friend, he was what I consider the head of the household, fell asleep while we were in the middle of praying. And I believe that the Spirit went on him and tried to lay him out. So he fell asleep in the middle of our prayer. Excuse me. And I'm like, we need to keep praying. Pray for him. And when we got done praying, we all said amen. He woke up and he said amen. And he's like, it's so weird. He's like, I've been wide awake all day. I haven't felt tired, and all of a sudden I just got tired and fell asleep. I'm like, well, it's because it's the enemy trying to stop you. And I'm like, and Scripture says once you cast the spirit out, that it'll go get its buddies and come back to you 7 times stronger. You got to beat it then. If you beat it then, it'll leave you alone for good. And I said, you got to, when they come back, you let me know, I'll come back again. We'll go through it. It'll be worse. And they're like, okay, we'll hold you to it. I'm like, okay. About a month goes by. It's 3 a.m. in the morning. My phone rings, wakes me up. And they're frantic on the other end of the phone. They're like, man, the doors are opening. They're closing. I got people pulling on my hair. I've been kicked and scratched at. I got claws marks on me. We need you to come down here and pray for us. I'm like, all right, I'm coming. So I roll out of bed and I get over there, and it's a foggy night. And I could tell this was not going to be a pleasant experience. So I'm driving real slowly. I basically a repeat of the last time I was there. But this time the door was already open. They could hear me coming up the porch, and like, is that you? I'm like, yeah, it's me. Go ahead and come in here. They said they could see somebody walking around in the living room, the dining room. Cabinets are opening and closing, things are being thrown at them. And I'm like, you got olive oil in your kitchen? And they're like, what do you need olive oil for? I'm like, have you ever heard of anointing oil before? You gotta put oil on things. It's a symbol of the Holy Spirit coming down as a protection. And I want to put olive oil on all of you. I want to put olive oil on the entrances and things like that. And they're like, yeah, we got olive oil. So I went in the kitchen. And they had a new family member in the house. It was his sister. And she was in the guest bedroom. And across the hall from her bedroom was another bedroom, but they weren't using it. It was taped off. I'm like, what's going on in that room? And like, we got black mold. So we taped it off. That way people don't go in there and get sick. I'm like, okay. And so I prayed over everybody. I taught them how to pray. And I said, y'all need to go to different parts of the house. Y'all need to repent. Ask the Lord to come into your heart. Ask the Lord to protect you. Because what we're getting ready to do, you're going to need protection. And so they did so. They went to their rooms, and while they were doing that, I was praying for them that God would be with them as well, and me. Because I don't want whatever this is to follow me home. So ask the Lord protect me, my friends, protect us when we go to encounter this thing. And then we all came back to the middle of the room. And I'm like, all right, we're going to open up the prayer right here in the middle of the house. So when we opened up, we all did a prayer, asked the Holy Spirit to pour down like water, like fresh oil. And then after we did that, I told him, now go, let the Holy Spirit lead you. If it's telling you to go over here, you need to go over there. You need to pray. And if it's telling you to go over here, you need to pray. And God's going to lead me attitude where he wants me to pray. So we all started praying. The doors are slamming, things being thrown at them, people are getting scratched. And then we heard somebody scream. Somebody was freaking out. And it was his sister. She said she felt like she needed to go into that room with the black mold. So she broke that seal open, went in there. And when she came out, she was just screaming and she couldn't breathe. And most of the time people write that off as, oh, that's the black mold getting her. But she said it felt like somebody had their hands around her throat so she would stop talking. And I told her brother that he needs to pray for her. And I started praying for them. And she started getting to where she started speaking. And I'm like, now you need to start praying. In the name of Jesus, let go of my neck. She said, in the name of Jesus, let go of my neck. And as soon as she said that, she gasped for air. She went, oh. And I'm like, now you need to ask for the Holy Spirit to protect you, fill you, heal your spirit, physical, mental. And so when we started praying, and she started praying, that left her. And we continued on praying for the house. She screamed again. And she said, I saw it. Like, you saw what? She said it was in her brother's bedroom. She said it looked like a man with a goat's head and horns that drooped from its head down its back, down to its waist. I'm like, we need to go in there then. So we went in there and started praying against it. And she freaked out again. She's like, it's in the, she could see, she said she could see this thing. She said, it went into the closet. I'm like, well, we need to go here. And I'm like, this is the last room we prayed for. There's nowhere else to go. And so the last time I said, in the name of Jesus, leave, she said she could hear it scream. She said it sounded like something grabbed it by the ankles and dragged it out of the house through the ceiling. I'm like, all right, so now this thing's out of the house. Now we pray for all the doorways and all the windows. And we put all on there. Man, they're listening to everything I'm saying. They're all spooked. And I said, we need to pray over the doorways out, the doorways in. We need to pray for the windows. We put oil on all the entrances, kind of like how in Exodus they had to put the blood of the lamb on Passover, right? So we did the same thing with olive oil representing the Holy Spirit. And we prayed that God would seal the entrance, that no evil spirits could come back in here. And they won't be welcome on the property anymore. And then it was just me and my friend. And I'm like, since you're the head of the household, you're the one that pays bills to your house, follow me. So we walked down this gravel road to the main gate that's on the property. And when we got to the gate, I'm like, you need to pray for protection on the gate. And nothing could even get on the property now. Now it can't be in the house, it can't be in the property. So he started praying, and I could hear something running in the gravel from the house. Like full sprint, just. And I looked, and I could see a tall figure, and it lost its shape. I just looked like a shadow, and it passed me. And when I turned, the gate rattled real hard. And then as soon as he said amen, I looked around, and all the fog in the property was outside the property line. There was no more fog on the property, and then all of a sudden all the dogs in the neighborhood started barking and freaking out. And I'm like, all right, this thing's gone now. And ever since then, they believe in the power of prayer. They pray all the time now. They go to church and all sorts of things like that. So that's one of my scary stories. I have a whole bunch of others, but I figured I'd save them for next time.
All right. Our next storyteller is Noah Kimaha. All right. What tribe are you? All right.
Oh, wait. Talk about a tough act to follow. That was good, man. Yeah, I didn't grow up here, but my family's from Hominy. I'm Noah Kimoha. We sold the land to the Hominy Buck High School. And we've got some land on Highway 20, so I guess I need to stop standing under trees because people are thinking I'm Bigfoot. My mom would have loved that story. She's an Enid. So my story is actually from Norman, Oklahoma. I lived out there for quite a long time. But it did happen on Indian Hills Road. And I'll let you decide if it's a ghost story or just a weird coincidence. So I started having dreams when I moved out to this place. And I was the third person to live there. There'd only been 2 people that had lived there from the time that it was Indian territory. And so when I first moved out there, I started having these very vivid dreams that there was a whole band of Indians dancing in sequence through the forest. And I'd see them over and over. And eventually, I started dreaming about a family of settlers. And they would come up to the house. And they were wearing clothing from the 1800s. It was the same family. And I kept dreaming of them over and over. And the first time it rained really hard, I was sleeping. I could hear the thunder and the lightning. And I heard the thunder crack. And a lightning bolt came through the window. And I opened my eyes and I looked up. And that whole family of settlers was just staring down at me, looking at me. And then I woke up. I realized actually that was just another dream. So I woke up in my dream, and then I woke up to reality. Nobody was there. And eventually those settlers started changing in my dreams. My dreams went black and white. And I started hearing this theme music. I'm not kidding, this is real. And you know, the Addams Family, they're not scary when you watch them on TV. But when you start dreaming about the Addams Family, I mean, they're scary, I'm telling you. And I just kept dreaming of the Addams Family. It was black and white dreams. I always dream in color. But all of a sudden, I'm dreaming black and white. Addams Family, and they just wouldn't leave me alone. And so I thought, okay, I got to investigate. Now, here's where the coincidence comes in. I went to the Norman County Hall of Records, and I looked in the town plat. I looked all the way back to the beginning, because like I said, I was only the third person to live in this land. And I had bought it from an old lady who was in her 90s. She lived there alone. She had bought it from the people that got it either in the land run or when it was opened up, the settler family. And I looked at their name. And the name on that book was James Adams. So the family that lived there was the Adams family. Maybe a coincidence, maybe a ghost story, I don't know.
Man, that was scary too. Okay, our next storyteller is Dee Wadsworth. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hello. I don't know many of you. I don't recognize too many faces, but those that do know me know that I cooked for many, many years for the Osage people, and I loved every minute of it. Except, and I got a lot of stories I could tell, but I'm just going to tell this one. So I was always, everybody was always telling me about the, and the dear lady and different things, and I'm a believer. You can make me believe. So anyway, we were camping at Gray Horse during the dances, and everybody was leaving, and we were getting ready to get our beds out and get ready to settle in. So we walked up to the showers to take a shower. Well, the friend of mine that was there cooking with me had finished, and she said, well, I'm gonna go back to camp. And I said, okay, I'll be right there. So I finished showering, my shower, and I was always told, don't never look them in the eyes, because they'll drive you, they'll call you and drive you. So I remembered that. So I got through with my shower, and I was headed out the door, and there's a little old lady standing there. She wasn't about this tall. She had a black shawl, kind of hunked over. And I remembered that, don't ever look them in the eyes, and so I didn't. So I went on, and I could feel her behind me. So I kept walking and kept walking. You know where the gravel there separates Pawhuska camp and the arbor. So just as I stepped on that gravel part, I was going to look back to see how close she was. Well, when I turned around and looked, that hill where that big tank, this little old lady had run down that hill, and just as I turned around and looked, she jumped that fence she cleared that fence by this much. And so I got back to camp, and I was telling my friend there, and she said, oh my God, what'd you do? I said, well, I just got to camp. I was hurrying, Well, her brother was sleeping in the car. We had a little tent, or a camper, and then our car. Well, about 5 o'clock that morning, he comes beating on the door, guys, let me in. So I rushed to the door. We never said a word to him about what happened to me. We're going, okay, what's wrong, Eddie, what's wrong? He said, God dang, he said, I heard something out there, and I opened my eyes. He said, there was something looking in the window like this. He said, I had to come. Well, the next day, we started talking about this story, and they said, well, did you look at her feet? And I said, no way. But anyway, I got several more stories that I could tell you, but I'll tell you one more that in Hominy, we were cooking down there. Everybody had left. That's when Eli had the drum, and Eddie and Maddie, we were all cleaning up, and man, it started lightning and thunder, and just storming, like the wind was blowing, and Eddie said, come on, you guys, we gotta get to safety. So we ran down the road he had a cousin that lived there. He was beating on the door, and we was trying to get out of the storm, and it just turned cold. They were just beating on the door, this hot, just like, felt like you stand by the fire, and the wind blew, and just hot. So his cousin finally lets us in, turns on the TV. There's nothing on TV about the storm. Nothing. So after the storm's over, we go back down to the camp. The porta potties are all turned over. The bowls are all out of the shelves, but there was nothing up in town. Nothing. Well, we had camped there before, and we kept telling everybody that we heard a peyote drum down the creek, down that. And Eddie said, well, I believe you now. So, yeah, I have a lot of stories I could tell, but I'm not going to really go into it, because I was always told not to talk about it. But I wanted to share that one story with you, so thank you.
All right. This next individual I'm getting ready to call up, he's a fine young man, real respectable young man. He's always helpful. He's always got a kind smile on his face when you see him. He's a good guy. Every time you see him, he's always being helpful. Very kind, very, very loving young man. So at this time, I want you to put your hands together for Gage McKinley.
I wish I had my sister here, Abby, to back me up on this. It was when my Aunt Mary Big Horse passed away. And it was about maybe a week or two after, and it was just me and Abby at my house in Indian Camp, and she was saying, Bub, go make me something to eat. And I said, well, okay, well, what do you want? And she was like, I don't know, something sweet. So I said, okay. So she was in my living room and in my kitchen, and all of a sudden we hear this big sneeze, and I'm like, Abby, was that you? And she said, no, was that you? And we just ran out of that house. And a lot of you know where I live on Indian Camp. It's the old Tinker home. And I've lived there for about 7 years now. And my other story that I want to tell is when the dances was the old arbor in Pawhuska. Me and my mom got into it, fighting. I danced that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I said, Mom, I'm not going to dress tonight. Yes, you are. You start ironing. I was like, no, I'm not going to dress tonight. I'm just going to sit here and watch TV. I was being selfish. And my elders always taught me, you listen to your mom, your aunt, and your grandma, and you go dress. And I didn't do it that time. And so my room's on the other side of my house, and my sister's room is too. So we had the door open, and I was sitting there, and I was just watching TV, flipping through, and that little person came out of my room and looked at me. I ran down to Patrick Louie. I said, I just saw something I'm not supposed to talk about. He said, what did you see? I said, I can't tell you because my elders taught me you don't talk about that kind of stuff. And so that's my 2 stories.
All right. I got you guys a special surprise tonight. I got a special guest, storyteller. She's known all through the United States for her ghost investigations. She's a local person, matter of fact. Some of you guys might know her. And again, outside of Oklahoma, she's well known. I want to give the floor over to Miss Stacy Price. Let's give her a round of applause.
Hi, I was looking for some familiar faces tonight because I actually broke my teeth on that building right there. I didn't realize it until driving here that was my very first investigation ever. Talking about like baptized by fire, that was amazing. Some of you will know my aunt. She actually retired from the tribe, working for you guys. Dawn Haney did a lot of, yes, I loved her going away stuff. Talk about making me cry, y'all. But back in, we were trying to remember what year it was. I think it was sometime between 2010 and 2012. And Chief Gray was the chief then. And she gets a call and she says, there's a paranormal investigation team from Stillwater. There's a paranormal investigations team from Stillwater trying to come into the superintendent's house, and they've got permission. And they said they need somebody to watch the HR records. And the only reason I'm gonna do it is because I know that this is what you dream about. So she's big chicken. So off we went. She told me ahead of time, she said you probably won't get to go in there with them and do what they do, but you know, you're welcome to come along if you've got your equipment, which I did. I collected everything. Showed up with everything and was hoping somebody'd call in sick. Guess what? Got my wish. So, and they needed one more person, so I started unloading everything that I owned at that time out of the vehicle and get upstairs. And first place I go to is the place that she tells me about, that they had heard little kids giggling in the closet. So guess what I did? I went down and sat down in that closet and waited for something to happen. And it did. So one of the things that you want to do as a paranormal investigator is you don't want to contaminate your evidence. By the way, retired military police from the United States Air Force. I'm very evidence-based. If I can't prove it, it didn't happen. And that's what I do. I'm actually a member of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research, which probably most of you know their founders, Ed and Lorraine Ward, the ones that did Conjuring House, Amityville. Yeah, their grandson interviewed me. So, anyways, I'm sitting there waiting for it to happen, and then I gave them permission. If you don't want something to touch you and you know you're in a haunted place, set your boundaries right away. You don't have permission to touch me. If you gotta say it out loud, say it out loud. But I gave them permission to touch me, and I'm sitting there, and I said, guys, come over here. I said, I want you to put your hands on each of my legs. And there was 2 different investigators with me. They verified it, and they said, this leg is ice cold. Yep, that's exactly what I was feeling. So that was number 1. Throughout the course of the evening, we had a ton of orbs that we were seeing on the, which I don't give a lot of credibility to orbs. Everybody's like, that's an orb, that's an orb. It's like, no, it's not. You didn't clean your house. That's dust. So we see a lot of stuff. But when something's blinking and it looks more like a nucleus, when you see colors, those are definitely orbs. So anyways, we had a lot of different things that happened that evening. One of the girls was absolutely like, I ain't going in that basement. You were right on about the basement. So, who goes to the basement? Yes, at last it's happening. So we go down, and it's dark. It is very, very dark. Especially, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. You're not seeing anything. But your eyes do adjust, and you do have a sense of what's in front of you. And you can practice these things at home, with somebody. If this is something that you're wanting to learn to develop for yourself, is turn the lights off. Have somebody walk up to you, and you'll develop your own intuitiveness on whether there's something in front of you or not. But there was something in front of me that, after my eyes adjusted to the blackness of the black, it got more and more like I could not see. And then I started noticing the tinglings in my body. When I investigate a house, I am a sensitive. These 3 fingers, if I put them in a closet and they go kind of tingly, there's something there. If it's the left leg that gets chicken skin, it's close. Both legs, it's very close. If it gets like right up next to me, my whole body will tingle. Now, if my head starts scratching, it's on me, and I don't like that. I've learned how to kind of handle that sometimes, but sometimes I'm very pushy. But that was an interesting night. But so, anyways, after the investigation is over and we're packing up to leave and stuff, everybody got their equipment out and stuff. My aunt was like, "Okay, we got to turn, the furnace and everything back on and stuff." And so we're standing there at the door trying to lock the door with the key, and it's not locking. And you're like, oh, great, you can't leave the records. It's about 2 a.m. What do we do? And I said, well, let me go inside and see if I can lock it from that side. I said, you stay on the outside. And I'm sitting in there, and I will still remember to this day, out of all of the hauntings I've ever been to, and I've gone to Waverly Hills and lots of places across the United States, I will never forget the anger that felt like from the house. It was like a scream, and it was powerful. Whatever's in that house came through, and it just sounded like it was deafening. And so I was like, okay, don't really want to do that too much. And I don't scare easy at all. I'm the first one to volunteer for stuff, but I was like, okay, who do we call? Because we're not sleeping here. So we went down and we called, told the police department, hey, we can't get the door to lock. You guys are going to need to do more frequent patrolling tonight until we can figure out what the problem is. And anyways, that was my experience with the house. But whenever you're doing your evidence reviews afterwards, we listen for electronic voice phenomena, also known as EVPs, and got a few good ones. But there was actually singing and drumming that we could hear, and it was super. And I tried every place to look for it. I was looking at the cloud, I was looking in old drives and stuff like that, because I really wanted to bring that to you guys tonight, and I just couldn't find it. I think it was on a laptop that got stolen, so sorry about that. But I did look for it so I could present it to you guys tonight, since we're not getting to go inside, darn it. But anyways, but yeah, it's a really cool place. So thank you for allowing me to speak to you guys tonight.
All right. I have another storyteller. She's already been up here, but she's got a good one. She said she forgot to tell it when she was up here. Let's put our hands together for Margot Gray.
Thank you for verifying that and backing me up and telling that other story. What I didn't tell about that last part, when I was in that house before, I could see my breath and I could feel that growl, is that it did say, "Get out." But I'm not gonna say it this loud, what it said. That's not the story I wanna tell, but she just told me, I was over there going, felt that, been there, and we should like be doing tours up there, making a little tourism money off that. But Paula, right here. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to tell this story before I left, and this comes back to being raised. My father was a full blood, my mother was half. My grandma Nettie, full blood, old school, all day long. But she taught us so many different ways about different ceremonies, even from like what women do when they dress their first young girl or granddaughter, or when they put their son in, how they lay that blanket out, and you ask someone, a good person, to dress that person. So she would always teach us these different ways, but when I was around, I would say 12 or 13, she had called my mom and said, "I want Margot to come stay the night." And so she was, "Grandma wants you to stay the night. I'm going to drop you off over there." And so I said, "Okay, yeah, I'll go stay with Grandma." And my grandma could tell, if she was here to tell the stories, you all would be huddled up, because she can tell you some old school Osage scary things or ways. And but she would just say it in just the sweetest little voice that she just had that way. And she also taught that old Osage too, not how we learn it now. Her Osage is a little different. And so I go over there, and my grandma had all these groceries on the counter, and she had a little, she lived in a duplex. And so she goes, I'm gonna teach you how to make chicken fried pork chops. I said, okay. So she was showing me and having me do everything. And I noticed that she had all of her really good dishes all set up. She set the table. She had the blue and white dishes, the fine china, the bowls, the glasses, everything, and had filled up the tea and all ready to go. And so we cooked mashed potatoes, chicken fried steak. We had green beans and new potatoes. We cooked all day, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know who's coming over, but I just can't wait, because, we had everything. She made a cucumber salad with tomatoes and onions and vinegar. It was just a summer dish. So she goes, well, let's set the table, and we set the food on all the plates. And then she set 2 plates in her kitchen. She had a small little kitchen, and she goes, well, let's eat. And I go, well, how come we're not eating in there, and who's coming? She goes, that's for my relatives. I'm cooking for my relatives tonight. And I go, well, are we gonna wait on them? I was like, are these relatives I haven't met? So anyway, she said, no, we're gonna sit here. So we ate I would say about 5:30. So we eat our meal, and I'm just like, their food's getting cold. I'm rationalizing everything, and she's just calm. So then it was around 6:30. We do our dishes up, and I said, well, I guess they're not going to show. She goes, no, we're going to go to bed. I'm like, Grandma, it's like 6 o'clock at night. I mean, I'm going to watch TV or nothing? No, we'll go to bed. So, and I told you, Grandma was old school. So we're in bed, and she's always got like blankets, and this is summer, and no AC. And I go, Grandma, I can't even breathe in here. And she goes, just go to sleep. So all the lights were off, and then I'd say around 2 o'clock in the morning, I can hear dishes moving in the dining room. I didn't hear voices, but I knew something was in there, and the light was on. So I'm laying there, and I'm just trying to get Grandma to wake up. I go, someone's in the house. She goes, I know. And I go, well, she goes, just go back to sleep. They'll be gone. They're just here. That's where we fixed that meal for them. And she just whispered it to me. I couldn't go back to sleep. And then the hallway light came on. And then I just shut my eyes and, just being a young kid, you didn't know. So then the next morning, I finally, out of fear, went to sleep. And I was saying my prayers and everything. And then the next morning I woke up. And then that's when she explained to me, that's how we honor our old ones. That's how we remember when we say their name and we pray for them. And that's how she did that to honor her mother, her aunt, her uncle, her brother. And they're all buried down there in Homney. And she showed me where they were buried. She goes, you always make sure you take care of these graves. But I think that's something that we should always remember that, I wish she would have explained more to it, but Grandma, she was just old school. She'd just tell you one time and that's it. We've talked about it. So with that, I wanted to say that she also said, when you go to bed, don't hang your arm or put your feet off the bed. That's when LPs can touch your hands and take you. So that comes from Grandma Nettie Lecture, people. That's what she said. And the other is you don't whistle at night. You all heard that one? Don't be whistling at night. The other is don't be waking up, laughing around in the morning. I'm one of these people that wake up and I'm in a good mood. And she goes, no. She goes, you laugh in the morning, you'll be crying at night. I went, oh, okay. But it's just all these stories. That's what the old one said. When you get up in the morning, you pray first thing in the morning. You cry for our people our ancestors, our old people. So those are just little things that, my grandma taught me, but I just want some of these younger people to hear. So with that, thank you.
Man, that was a good one, good one, good one. Okay, at this time, we're going to call Echo Reed. Come on down. You won. The Price is Right.
Hi. This happened to me when I was in high school, or a little after high school. I grew up in Jay, Oklahoma. I don't know if you know where Jay is. It's in northeast Oklahoma. It's near Grove, Grand Lake area. But so where my family lives, there's a creek. It runs from Arkansas and it runs into Lake Uchee. And it's clear and it's rock bottom. It's very pretty. So one night, I was with two of my cousins. And we were just hanging out. There's a road called Stick Springs Road. And there's not really a whole lot to do in Jay. So people, younger kids younger people like to drink and drive. They'll get beer and they'll sit on the side of the road and drink. So I was with two of my cousins, and they had like a 6-pack of beer, and they hadn't even opened it yet. But there's a spring down on this road, and that's where we would go and get our water because it's so cold and it tastes so good. We just had a bucket of water with a dipper, and that was our water. But so on this night, my cousin had pulled over and we were by this spring, and we were just talking and having a good time, laughing, cracking jokes. And my cousin Jamie, he's not afraid of anything, but we were laughing and we all looked, I don't remember this, but he said, we were laughing and I heard him say, "Did you see that?" And my cousin Margot, she goes, "Yeah, I saw that." And I thought they were just playing with me because I didn't see nothing. He said, we all looked at the same time. Did you see it? And I said, no, what'd you see? And so my cousin Margot goes, it was something dark, and it went across the road, and it was like a green ball following it. And I didn't see it. I thought they were just pulling my leg. So my cousin Jamie, he just kind of, you could tell we went from laughing and having a good time where his tone kind of went down, and he wasn't so as cheerful as he was when we got there. So he said, maybe we should go somewhere else. So we took off and we went to another area, and on that creek runs along this area we went to. And we were sitting there, and there's a wooden bridge, and it kind of comes at a curve. And he started walking toward the edge of that bridge, and he goes, it's here. And I was like, oh God. Every time I hung out with him, it seemed like something weird would happen. So I went over towards him, and my cousin Margot, she was scared. She was closer to the car. So when I started walking towards him, you could hear something, and the grass was kind of tall. I don't know what kind of weeds those were, but you could hear something running, like it was running hard. It wasn't a human, and it wasn't a deer. It was heavier than a deer, but it was running right towards us, and it felt like it was moving the trees like that as it was coming towards us. And I started looking around, I was like, what is that? And he goes, let's face it. I was like, no, we're not gonna face it. And I grabbed him by the shirt and yanked him, and we got in the car and we took off. So we have this land that also runs into the creek, so I said, let's just go down there, at least we know we're safe. So we went down there, and he said, drop me off right here, because there's a gate as you enter this creek, because it's private land. So we let him off, and we drive on down, and my cousin Margot, she's like, I'm scared. I said, yeah, I'm scared too. This was supposed to be a fun night, and it's turned out to be kind of scary. So we're sitting in there waiting for him, and I said, maybe we should just drive back, make sure he's okay. So eventually he shows up, and he said, it's here. And I was like, well, what is it? And he didn't want to talk about it. So by then I was like, okay, I think we should just go home, because I don't know what this is, and it's scaring all of us. And clearly it wasn't for me to see, because I heard it when it was coming towards us on the bridge, but I didn't see the dark thing run across the road with the green light, with the green ball following it. But I will just say, after that, I quit hanging out with my cousin Jamie. That was enough for me. But that's probably the only scary thing I've actually experienced. But whatever happened, it was for them and not for me.
Man, that was a good one. All right, we have this young man that wants to be heard. You know, he normally is known for the songs that he sings. He said he's got that elk medicine like that. So anyway, I'd like to call TJ Raycorn up here. Put our hands together for him.
All right, hello everybody. I'm not much of a storyteller like my dad or, a bunch of you other people, but there's been a couple of questionable moments. I grew up in the camp. I know I see a lot of my neighbors here down there, and I never was scared of anything really. Nothing really bad happened, and we always ran around and played in the creek or swam in the creek or did whatever. But there was this one time that a group of my friends, we were playing down at Ed Redigal Park. It's kind of connected to that creek. And it became, I think it was like sunset, close to getting dark, and my friend's mom came and picked everyone up. And I just lived across the field. I mean, it's, 2-minute walk at best. And so I was like, oh, no, it's all right. I'll just kind of just walk over there myself. So they drove off, and I was walking back and, just doing whatever, kicking rocks, looking for snakes or whatever. And I looked over, and just at the, edge of the curb, kind of up ahead, there was something standing there. And at first I didn't pay it no mind, but as I kind of really looked at it, it looked like a bird. Some kind of bird, I don't know. At first I thought it was an owl, but maybe it wasn't, and I just saw it kind of move like maybe it was, hurt or something. So kind of tried to move around it, but my eye was on it. I was not. And all of a sudden it just kind of started flapping its wings a little bit. And it almost looked like it started running after me. So boy, I took off smashing. I was going home, and I swear I made it home in 10 seconds. long time, and I think I can't remember. We even had. I remember I sat down and the food was ready. I think, and it was hamburger helper, piece of butter bread. So I forgot everything else. But then went to bed, went to sleep, and kind of tossed and turned, and went out. I was in a pretty deep sleep, but I woke up, and I could hear this kind of, and it sounded like it was coming from directly above me, there was a roof above the roof outside, and I was like, oh shit. So I hopped up, and I woke up everybody in the house. Everybody's getting up. And, it was pretty spooky. I don't know. I was like, what does this mean, Dad? Couldn't tell me. But anyways, that's basically it.
All right. Now, we're getting ready to call Mr. Jeff Cote. Mr. Jeff, the dad. The old man, they said. We're tired of hearing those youngsters speak. Wow.
Well, some of you know I've been visiting here for about 34 years now, give or take. So I'm Pawhuska and Malice. I grew up on an Indian island up in Maine. So I'm going to tell you a couple stories about Indian Island. Indian Island was kind of spooky. So this one time, my friend, the way Indian Island is you have the head of the island where the bridge is, and then you have this one road that goes through the whole reservation. And it goes all the way around, makes a big circle. And there's a highest point in the county is on our reservation. It's this hill, it's called Oak Hill. A lot of people live on it. And then there's a pond, so you go up to the Oak Hill, then you go down over this other hill. My family's property is right. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my family. My family, my grandmother's parents and their parents, and a couple generations back was last hereditary chiefs of the Pawhuska Nation. So the house that she lived in was called the governor's mansion, and that's where the leadership of the tribe lived for a long time. And then when we made our treaties with white men, they furnished this house with all new furniture and stuff. And all my elders, I see pictures of them. They're all sitting on the floor because the furniture was uncomfortable. So they didn't like sitting in the furniture. So, but there was this house there, and then when you go down this hill, the backside of Oak Hill, there's a bog, like a swamp there, and then for like a quarter mile, there's no lights. It's just dark road, and then you'll come to like where our agency is. It's like the police station, the community building, Stock Alexis Arena, all these places really lit up. Indian Island School, the new one, which isn't new now, but it was new then.
So I'd been up at my friend's house. My friend, his name's Sean Neptune. And I was staying up with. I used to hang out up and watch movies and do other things. But so I was hanging out up up with him, and it was about midnight. So it's in the middle of the summertime. So I started walking back to my house. Which you had to go down the backside of Oak Hill and across this dark area to get to my house. It was River Road was a little bit north of Sauk Alexis Arena. So it's almost half a mile from there. So I'm walking home, and I cross under the last light, and then I'm about halfway down this dark part of the road, and I turn around and look, because I can hear something behind me, and I turn around and look, and there's this black dog under the light, big old black dog, and it goes out under the light, and then passes into the darkness. And then I can hear like that, and I look, and there's a man, a tall man, running towards me. So I start running. So I'm like, holy man! So I said, I'm running. You know, I'm about 17, so I'm not as tough as I think I am. So I'm like running, and I get to the lights, and I run out into the lights. I'm by the police station. I turn around and see what's chasing me, and that black dog comes running out under the lights. And that was creepy, because it was a person. I know that. It was a person, man, and that freaked me out. Another time, like I told you about my grandmother's home. My grandmother's home was, so my mother moved away from the reservation, was away from the reservation for about 30 years, and my grandmother left with her. So my mother moved to Connecticut with my father, and my grandparents used to live in that house on Indian Island, abandoned it, and moved to the reservation, which was full of all this really nice furniture and things. And my mother said she had a mirror in her house that was like 8 feet tall by like 9 feet wide. It was like to cover the whole wall, and it had like a gold frame, real heavy thing. I'm not, if I'm correctly, I think maybe it was made of metal, like a mirror that was made of metal, not really glass. Anyway, she said when she was a little girl, she used to talk to people in the mirror. So she'd see people in the mirror and she'd talk to them. And she was never afraid of them because she believed that was our elders that were visiting her in the mirror. So anyway, they went to Connecticut, and about 10 years later, these people went in our house and stole a bunch of stuff out of this house. Took furniture, sold it and stuff, you know, and it ended up, this mirror ended up all the way down in the Carolinas, and this family had it. And so we had moved back to the reservation. We were living in River Island after all this had happened. We're living in the house, and my mother gets a phone call, and I can hear her talking, and she's real angry, and she hangs up the phone. And I was like, Mom, everything all right? She's like, that woman that took my mirror wants me to, she wants to give that back. I was like, okay. She said, well, their little girl was sitting in front of that mirror and said they would talk to the people in the mirror for a while. And my mother told her, said, you had no right to come in our home and take that. So nothing good's gonna come from that, so you can keep it. It's yours now. So she kept it. And we get another phone call, and they're frantic. They want that mirror to come back. They like, take this mirror. And they said that mirror fell on their daughter. I don't know if it lived or if she lived or died. I don't know. And my mother told her, said, no, you should never have took that. And now it's yours. You keep it. So that's probably the scariest story I know of any hauntings in my family. I've seen the pictures of the mirror too. So it has there's a picture of this man in dress blue Marine uniform, and my uncle Lawrence passed away. He'd been killed in Vietnam, and he looked just like him. So that's I never felt creepy. I heard all kinds of stories about my grandparents' property being haunted and stuff being thrown at people and all that stuff. But I had some person go up there and try to bless the property, and they got told to get the hell out of here in Pawhuska. But I never had a problem with any of that. I figured it's just because of my family. I didn't want them around. But that's all I got.
All right. I was told to save this guy for last because he said he was the best looking out of those Cote boys. So we're going to go with Chris Cote. Come on down. He's the keenest one, he said. All right.
So I was invited here by Chris Hill personally, and he told me he wanted me to talk Osage and tell a story, and so I'm gonna do that now. Goti, Bachawadani, Numpehi Waglipe, Nikashia, Warashti Tinampea. So long ago, there was a mountain that used to swallow people whole. And it was always hungry. Bachawadani Numpehi Shimiji, Dagli, Kipahampe, Kakum, Le Warashti. So they picked 3 girls in that mountain, swallowed them up. Shina Ekiompia, Shimishi Dagliwin, Wadastutape. And they did it again. They sent another good girl, and that mountain swallowed her up. Wadastutape. Kakota, Dama broke up. Wajanjipe, Gadam Akatam, oh, Simiji Akikam, Akagape, the Wale Wajanjipe. The whole village was struck with the terrible grief, and they began to wail, Chagiaba, just Chagiaba. Oh, Wahadake Wayne too, yeah. And then all of a sudden, came an orphan. Bajo wadani teade teska kaska. He said, I can kill the mountain. Bajo wadani aka hatsialape. So he went up to the mountain. Gashi the bajo aka hatsialape. Vishtita, Anna, Anashita, the ho, Bakota Bahu Wadania Wadashtitapia. So when he got to the top of that mountain, he said, me too, swallow me. And then the mountain swallowed him up. And then Monseta Ahipia. So when he got there to the bottom, all he saw was white bones, bone dry. He was there where the girls were. They were gone. And so he had that knife, that orphan, he had a knife. And so he went up to that mountain and he cut the artery of the heart. Oh, Wahoike, Verne, on Boskirka, on Bostonka, on Kirera. Oh, this orphan that I have swallowed is making me nauseous. Kukakape. Bakata, Shimishizani, Jolhape, the Akshipe. So after that, he made them come back up. He threw them up. And then all the girls were there, and they went back and they made it home. Akshipiaha, Zania, Pawajawatia. All the village, they was all so happy. Bakata, the Shimishitali, Kupe, the Wagrankatan. And so they gave him those 4 girls to take as wives. Bakana.
Now, let's give them another round of applause. That's the beauty of the Osage Nation. Again, at this time, I'd like to call the Osage Nation Museum staff and leader come up so we can recognize these guys. All you Osage Nation museum workers that helped put this on, come on up. Welcome up here. Come on down. I want you guys to introduce yourselves so people know who helped put this on.
Kiyikiompa wajaji jaji abri. Marla Record Miller istahi ajaji. Abri. Wahakali nikishe only mikshe. Sijo washtaki damali only mikshe.
Hi, Bashe. John Horsey, Jaji Abri, Jaji Wajaji Watseta, Zanjali, only Mikshe. Thank you for being here.
Jordan is Jaji Abri, Humba Daka Wajaji Abri. In full disclosure, I've actually been on PTO this week, so I didn't help as much as everybody else, but it's a wonderful event. I'm happy to be here.
Hello again. Noah Chatlow. I just wanted to say thank you all for coming. This was a really good turnout. We had a lot of people coming. It was fun to hear everybody's stories and laugh around and even get spooked a little bit. So yeah, thank you all for coming.
Hello, my name is Julie Cote. I'm a customer service representative. I sit at the front desk of the museum. And I keep counting people. We officially have 188 people.
All right, Miss Marla has a story for you guys.
I have a couple of stories, just really short. And also just wanted to thank the staff, and especially John Horschuk really worked hard to pull a lot of this together, coordinating with Chris and Veronica, and I wanted to thank them very much tonight to make it, flow like it did, and also to encourage everybody to bring those stories up and hear all of them. It's been really great. So I'm going to tell 2 short stories. One is we always get people in the museum from all over, like all the departments, Sometimes they're in search of things for themselves. They're here for a different variety of reasons. We had a couple come in who were ranchers, and they were living outside of Austin. And they said they loved to go to tribal museums. And they would go to all these different tribal museums, and then they came to ours, but they would travel around and go into more rural areas and things like that, and that's one of the things they like to do. But the man was in search of something. And as he was going into the temporary gallery where we rotate the exhibitions, he came along the image of John Joseph Matthews. And then on it, the description is content on there. And he came up to me with a very surprised look on his face. And he said, my wife and I go to all these tribal museums, and we've been in search of something. And he said, what does Wakanta mean? And I said, well, in my best understanding, it means God. And he was just like, wow. And he said, I've been looking and seeing, and I'd asked different people, and they didn't know. And he said, I was out on my ranch, and I was out by myself. And he said, this huge wind came over me, and it said Wakanta. And that was something that happened that I thought was really, really moving. And then the other thing, and people talk about the museum being haunted, and I believe in spirits and things like that. I haven't really had any experiences like that, but maybe a couple. And this one's a little humorous. I've been working late, and I had a lot of things, going on. I had my backpack and all the things that I was getting ready to take home and get in the car and take it home and everything. As I got to the door, that back door on the west side, it opened up for me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just left. So that was interesting. But thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you again for Chris and Rob.
Again, hold up. Can anybody, any guys address that? Yeah.
As I said, this is the old ancient house. This is the first building on that hill. This is a very old building. If you take that porch off, it's just like this the City Hall building, that one next to it, they call it the Chamber of Commerce. It's built just like that. So this is 1800s building. And one of the original pictures we have is Osage warriors in cropped hair. Like our brother right here, with blankets on. That's how we wore our hair back in the old day. And then then you see the men standing on the second floor. There's no porch there. And so the top of it, you could see down into the city, down into the valley, but also behind there. So we think it's, kind of a lookout. For the whole area, you could see forever. Back in the day, there wasn't very many trees around here. And it was a rolling plains and grass. So it's just got a lot of history. This is a very, very old building. When they were working on it, at first, they were getting strange things every day. Every day, they go to lunch, come back, their tools would be outside. They were getting kind of spooked, but as work progressed, everything just kind of got left alone. And we think, maybe it was whatever was there just understood that we want to improve the building. That's what we did. And so, I really like this building. The walls are 22 inches thick. The windows are old style. I mean, it's a very old building. And then the old floor, they covered it up, and the stonework. It's just a very, very old building. Hope that helped you.
I would add to that too, because this is the superintendent's house. Was it the agency too before? Yeah, figured. I've worked in museums too, and I've worked in the Five Civilized Tribes Museum in Muskogee, and it's also the first agency building, and it's built on a hill, and it has a lookout, just the same thing, because these folks, when they first moved into these areas, were very afraid of the tribes, and so that tracks, because that same building in Muskogee looks that way too. That one, I don't know how rugged the Osages were, but later on with that building in Muskogee, they realized that the natives in that area were a little bit more friendly, and they moved it downtown off that hill, but very soon after that. But that's also that same build. Sandstone, has a second floor porch and balcony, and I do think that's what they built it for, and they had the same kind of things in mind there. So.
Well, again, I just want to take this